Welcome to today's Sutta study. So, since it's the month of May, it's a special month for the disciples of the Supreme Buddha. And I'm sure you all know why, because it's on a full moon day in the month of May, which is in Sri Lanka, we call it the month of Vesak. It's on this month's full moon day that our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, was born into this world. And it's on this full moon day, this coming full moon day, that the Supreme Buddha, it's on a full moon day in May that the Supreme Buddha became supremely enlightened by eradicating all taints, by eradicating all defilements. The Supreme Buddha became supremely enlightened on a full moon day in May, on the Vesak full moon day. And also, it's on a Vesak full moon day that the Supreme Buddha reached Parinibbana. So because of that, this month is a very special month for the Supreme Buddha's disciples, and especially in Sri Lanka, there are many celebrations and many ceremonies to commemorate the Supreme Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and the Parinibbana. Okay, so because of that, I thought in this month of May we will learn suttas in relation to Supreme Buddha, so that we can, expand our knowledge about Buddhas, because it's very rarely in this samsara that we get to even hear the word Buddha. That itself is very rare. So for a person to, because there are, in times where Buddhas don't appear, there are some people who from Asia, ancient scriptures and things like that, or by word of mouth, they have heard of this special person called Buddha, but they do not know who it is and how Buddhas arise into this world. They don't know much about it, but they have heard that there are special people called Buddhas in this world that arise in this world from time to time. So for us to have the opportunity to, identify, learn who a Buddha is, about the Buddha's qualities, and about the teaching of the Buddha is a very rare opportunity in this long journey of samsara. And if a person forms a pleasant mind about the Supreme Buddha, then that pleasant mind itself can be a seed that will lead to Nibbana. If a seed is there, one day it will grow once the right environment is there. So Shraddha, or confidence in the Buddha, or pleasant mind about the Buddha, is like a seed. One day that seed will grow and turn into a big tree. In that way, that seed of confidence in the Buddha, that faith, that pleasant mind can indeed lead us to Nibbana. Okay? So if a person learns about the Supreme Buddha's great qualities and forms a pleasant mind, that pleasant mind is very, very valuable, and that opportunity to form a pleasant mind about the Buddha is so rare in this samsara. And if a person takes advantage of this opportunity, then that person can definitely pave his way to escaping from this samsara. Okay. So today we're going to learn a sutta that's found in the Majjhima Nikaya of the Pali Canon. And the name of this sutta is called Acchariya Abbuta Sutta. Wonderful and marvelous quality, wonderful and marvels of the Buddha can be learned from the sutta. Because Buddhas are not like a normal human being. Buddhas are very different. They have very specialties. They have marvels and wonderful things in their lives. And so when a person learns about these marvels, and if a person forms a pleasant mind, then the person can collect lots of merit into his life. So in this sutta, the Supreme Buddha, in this sutta, the Supreme Buddha um, teaches about marvelous and wonderful things about the Buddha's life. Okay. So on this occasion, the Blessed One was living in Savatthi in Jeta's Grove in Anathapindika's Park. And now at that time, a number of bhikkhus were sitting together in an assembly, and they had returned from their alms round, and after their meal, they were discussing how wonderful and marvelous the Tathagatas are. So the bhikkhus were discussing among themselves how marvelous and wonderful Supreme Buddhas are. And these bhikkhus were discussing like this. Supreme Buddhas, the Supreme Buddha knows even about Buddhas in the past. Okay? And they know how they attain Nibbana, and they know about their names, and they know about the families of those Buddhas, about the virtues that they practiced. They know everything about the past Buddhas. Okay? So they were discussing, this is so wonderful and this is so marvelous. And now while they were discussing this, Venerable Ananda, who was there, told bhikkhus, friends, Tathagatas are wonderful and have wonderful qualities. Tathagatas are marvelous and have marvelous qualities. And so while they were discussing this, the Supreme Buddha rose from meditation and came there. And the Supreme Buddha sat on the seat that was prepared for him. And the Supreme Buddha asked, bhikkhus, what were you discussing? What were you discussing? And at that time, the bhikkhu said, Venerable Sir, we were talking about how wonderful and marvelous the Supreme Buddha is. Okay? And at that time, the Supreme Buddha addressed Venerable Ananda, and Supreme Buddha said, Ananda, that being so, Ananda, explain more fully the Tathagata's wonderful and marvelous qualities. So at that time, the Supreme Buddha told Venerable Ananda to tell these bhikkhus more about the Tathagata's wonderful and marvelous qualities. Okay, so the Supreme Buddha didn't tell it himself. The Supreme Buddha asked Venerable Ananda to explain it. So at this time, Venerable Ananda, because as you know, Venerable Ananda, he knows everything that the Supreme Buddha has taught, because Venerable Ananda has the greatest memory. He even had a foremost title given by the Supreme Buddha for having the best memory among monks who have a good memory. The Venerable Ananda has the best memory. It said that the moment you utter a word, Venerable Ananda always remember it. So Venerable Ananda retained all the words of the Buddha. That's why Venerable Ananda was so useful, so beneficial in the Dhamma councils, where they chanted all the Dhamma and they collected the Dhamma together. So if Venerable Ananda was not there, it would be such a difficult task, because Venerable Ananda had retained all the Dhamma talks that were given by the Buddha in his memory. So at that time, when the Supreme Buddha asked Venerable Ananda to tell the bhikkhus about the wonderful and marvelous qualities about the Supreme Buddha, Venerable Ananda said, I have heard and learned this, Venerable Sir, from the Blessed One's own lips. So now he is not saying what he has understood, but he's saying what he has heard from the Buddha himself. So at one point, the Supreme Buddha has taught these wonderful and marvelous qualities about the Buddha, and Venerable Ananda has retained it. Okay, so he is now recollecting the words of the Buddha. And he says, I have heard this from the Blessed One's own lips. That is, mindful and fully aware Ananda, the Bodhisattva appeared in the Tusita heaven. That mindful and fully aware the Bodhisattva appeared in the Tusita heaven. This I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. So, as you know, previous to the Buddha's birth, the Supreme Buddha was reborn in the Tusita heaven, and he was the god Santusita. Okay, so here what Venerable Ananda is saying is that the Supreme Buddha has taught Venerable Ananda at one point that the Bodhisattva was the Bodhisattva appeared in the Tusita seven very mindfully. Okay, so the life previous to that was in the human world, where the Bodhisattva was born as Prince Vesantara. Okay, if you have heard the Jataka tale of the Vesantara Jataka, the Bodhisattva was born in the human world as Prince Vesantara, where he practiced and perfected the paramita, or the perfection of giving, where in that life he gave away his children, where he gave away his own wife, in addition to all the wealth that he has. So that's the life that he perfected, the perfection of dana, generosity. And after dying from that world, he mindfully was reborn in the Tusita heaven as Prince Santusita. Okay, so Venerable Ananda says this is one of the wonderful and marvelous qualities of the Blessed One. And then he says, I have learned from the Blessed One's own lips that mindfully and fully aware the Bodhisattva remained in the Tusita heaven, and mindfully the Bodhisattva spent his entire lifespan in the Tusita heaven. Okay? And he says, mindfully and fully aware, the Bodhisattva passed away from the Tusita heaven and descended into his mother's womb. Okay, so in all of those times, the Bodhisattva is well mindful, is well aware of everything, very mindful. And mindfully, he was conceived in the mother's womb, that is, in the womb of Queen Mahamaya. Okay, so this is a marvelous and wonderful quality of the Blessed One, because the Supreme Buddha teaches there are four types of people in this world. There are four types of people in this world, and that is, some people, they are conceived in the mother's womb mindful. That means they are well, when they are being conceived, they are well aware. Okay, and then when they are in the womb, they are very mindful, they are well aware. And when they leave the womb, so that means when they are being born, they are very mindful. This is what the Supreme Buddha is saying. The Supreme Buddha is like that. The Bodhisattva is like that. When the Bodhisattva is conceived, he knows that he's being conceived. Okay? When the Bodhisattva is growing in the womb, he knows he's growing in the womb. And when the Bodhisattva is leaving the womb, he is well aware now he's leaving the womb. So this is one type of people. And there are some people, they know that they are being conceived, but afterwards they don't know anything. They are not mindful. They don't know that they're growing in the womb, and they don't know when they are leaving the womb. Okay. And there are some people, they are aware, of when they're conceived in the womb, and they're aware when they're growing in the womb, but when they're leaving, they are not aware. So like that, this Abhimata teaches in one of the suttas that in this way, some people are completely aware, completely mindful about when they're being conceived, when they're growing in the womb, and they're leaving. But some people don't know anything. They don't know, they are not mindful, they are not aware of when they are being conceived, they are not aware of when they are growing in the womb, and they are not aware of when they leave the womb. Okay, so one of the marvels of the Bodhisattva is the Bodhisattva is well aware, mindful about the conception, about growing, and when he's leaving the womb. Okay. And then Venerable Ananda says, I have heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. And that is when the Bodhisattva passed away from the Tusita heaven and descended into his mother's womb. So that is during the conception, a great immeasurable light surpassing the splendor of the gods appeared in the world. So at the moment the Bodhisattva was conceived, it said that a bright light spread throughout the entire universe. It's so bright that it brightens even the darkest hell, it said. In the darkest hell, it said that the beings in the hell, they can't even see each other, and they don't even know that there are other beings. But during the conception of a bodhisattva, such a bright light is emitted throughout the entire universe, such that even that darkest hell is lightened. And it's said that that's when those beings realize that there are other beings in the hell as well. It's that bright. Okay, so Venerable Ananda says, this is also a marvelous and wonderful quality of the Supreme Buddha. Okay. And then Venerable Ananda says, I have heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips, and that is, when the Bodhisattva had descended into his mother's womb, 4 young deities come and guard him at the 4 quarters, so that no humans or non-humans or anyone at all could harm the Bodhisattva or the mother. So another marvelous thing that happens is when a Bodhisattva is conceived in the mother's womb, from the moment the Bodhisattva is conceived, the 4 guardian gods, until the Bodhisattva is born, the 4 guardian gods are always there in the 4 quarters to protect the Bodhisattva, so that no harm in any way would come to the Bodhisattva or the mother. So Venerable Ananda says, I have heard this being said by the Blessed One himself, that this is also one of the marvelous and wonderful qualities of the Blessed One. So these marvels and these wonderful qualities can only be heard in the life of a Buddha. That's why we should form a pleasant mind about these things when you hear it. Okay? And then Venerable Ananda says, Venerable Sir, I have heard this by the Blessed One's own lips, and that is, when the Bodhisattva has descended into his mother's womb, she become intrinsically virtuous, refraining from killing living beings, from taking what is not given, from misconduct, from false speech, and from taking intoxicating drinks and drugs. Okay, so this is also marvel of a bodhisattva, of a Buddha, and that is, when a bodhisattva is conceived in the mother's womb, Naturally, intrinsically means naturally that that mother would never ever break the five precepts. Yes, now normally a normal person would protect the five precepts by learning it from the Supreme Buddha, right? But when a bodhisattva is conceived in the mother's womb itself by the power of the bodhisattva, that mother becomes virtuous. So this is definitely a very marvelous and wonderful quality of a Buddha. Okay, so see, now this to this you can see when a meritorious person is conceived in a mother's womb, that affects the mother as well. Okay, because it said that if a very meritorious person who loves to give dana is conceived in a mother's womb, the mother gets the urge to give dana. So that baby has an influence on the mother. If it's meritorious, and it's the same thing if it's the other way around. If it's a person who's not meritorious, that affects the mother as well. Because as you know, I think I have taught this story before of a Venerable Losaka. Okay, Venerable Losaka, because of one of his bad karma that he has done in the past life, which was burning the food or burning the food that was given to an arahant, that was offered to an arahant. From that life on, it said that he has been reborn in bad worlds, and every time he's reborn, he doesn't get any food. And so as time passed by, he was conceived in a mother's womb in the human world. And it said that from the moment that he was conceived, because of the power of his bad karma, that his entire village didn't get any food. So you can see then, those around us influences how we feel and how we live as well. So if a meritorious people are around us, then that affects us. And if it's the other way around, that's also the case. So Venerable Ananda says, another quality that is wonderful is when a bodhisattva is conceived in a mother's womb, that mother becomes naturally virtuous without anyone teaching her. Okay, so that is because of the power of a bodhisattva, because of the merit and um, the power of merit and the power of goodness and pureness of a Buddha. Okay, it affects the mother as well. And then Venerable Ananda says, I have heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips, and that is, when the Bodhisattva had descended into his mother's womb, no sensual thought arises in her mind. So the moment that a bodhisattva is born in the mother's womb, then mother never gets any lustful feelings. So see, because of how pure the bodhisattva is, that purity also affects the mind of the mother. So then imagine the other way around, right? If a person who's filled with defilements is conceived in a mother's womb, then that also affects that mother. Okay. So Venerable Ananda says this, and also, just as she doesn't have any lustful thoughts, no man ever feels lustful towards the mother. That is also part of that. Okay, so another marvelous and wonderful quality of the Blessed One is when a bodhisattva is conceived in the mother's womb, that mother never feels any lustful, desireful thoughts towards other men, and men never feel lustful towards her. Okay, why? Because of the power of the purity of the bodhisattva. Okay, so these are only found in a life of a Buddha. So that's why we have to form a pleasant mind. Okay. And then Venerable Ananda says, I have heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. And that is, when the Bodhisattva has descended into his mother's womb, that is, when the Bodhisattva is conceived in a mother's womb, that mother obtains the five causes of sensual pleasures and she enjoys herself with them. So, because of the merit of the Bodhisattva, when a Bodhisattva is conceived in the mother's womb, that mother gets all the pleasures that she wants. Whatever she wants to eat, she gets. Okay, whatever she wants to hear, she gets to hear. Whatever she wants to see, she gets to see. So she gets all the sensual pleasures that she wants. Why? It's because of the merit and power of a bodhisattva. Okay, so this Venerable Ananda says this is also wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. And then Venerable Ananda says, I have heard this from the Blessed One's own lips, and that is, when the Bodhisattva has conceived in the mother's womb, that mother never gets any afflictions or bodily fatigue. So when the Bodhisattva, now normally when a woman gets pregnant, she has to go through, because she's going through so many changes in her body. She feels nauseous. She has lots of fatigue. She has lots of illnesses, headaches, and all of those things, right? But when a Bodhisattva is conceived in a mother's womb, because of the power of the Bodhisattva, the mother never gets any illness, doesn't have any pain, doesn't have any fatigue in her body. She is very happy. Why? Because of the power of a Buddha. Okay. And also, she is able to see her baby in the womb, just like if you take a pure gem and if you put a thread through the gem, then you can clearly see the thread through the gem. In that same way, the mother is able to see the baby inside of her. That is also another wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. Okay, so it's kind of like a psychic power almost. Because of the power of the Bodhisattva, the mother is able to see the baby, how he's growing. Okay. So all of these things are taught by the Buddha himself. Okay, these are things that Venerable Ananda has heard the Supreme Buddha teach through his own lips. Okay. And then Venerable Ananda says, I have heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips, and that is, 7 days after the birth of the Bodhisattva, his mother dies and reappears in the heaven. So this is a nature of the mothers of Buddhas. That is, mothers of Buddhas always die in 7 days after giving birth. Not because of the giving birth process, but because that is the maximum lifespan that they have. Okay, because remember, before Buddha appears into this world, a Buddha, before being reborn in the human world, the Bodhisattva looks at 5 things. Looks to see whether this is the right time to be reborn. Look to see which continent am I going to be reborn in. Okay? And looks to see which city, which area am I going to be reborn in. And looks to see which family am I going to be reborn in. And looks to see which mother am I going to be reborn in. Okay, so look, Bodhisattvas don't just, they're not reborn just spontaneously. Before a Bodhisattva is born in the last life to become the Buddha, they look at these 5 things. And if these 5 factors are complete, only they are reborn. So they look to see who the mother is, and the mother definitely has to be someone who has the maximum lifespan of her has to be 7 days after giving birth, that is the maximum lifespan of the mother. So that is the nature. That is the nature of the mother's lifespan. So the mother dies not because of giving birth, but because that's the maximum lifespan that she has. So Venerable Ananda says this is also wonderful and marvelous quality of the Buddha. And then Venerable Ananda says, I have heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips, and that is, other women give birth after carrying the child in the womb for 9 or 10 months. But the Bodhisattva's mother gives birth to the baby after carrying him in her womb for exactly 10 months. Not a day more, not a day less. Okay, so that's also another marvelous quality of the Blessed One. So usually, when a baby is born, we can't say, the baby is going to be, sometimes the baby is born before 10 months, sometimes after 10 months, sometimes at 9 months, right? But Bodhisattvas, they're always born exactly 10 months after conception. There's no doubt about it. It's an exact date. Okay, so that is also wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. And then Venerable Ananda says, I have heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips, and that is, other women give birth to the baby being seated or lying down, but the Bodhisattva's mother gives birth to him standing up. As you know, Queen Mahamaya gave birth to the Bodhisattva while she was walking, going sightseeing in the park Lumbini. So when she gave birth, she was holding on to a sala tree branch and she gave birth. So that this is something special about a Buddha's life. Okay, so it's not seen or heard in any other life, in any other person's life. So these are unique things that are only found in the life of a Buddha. Okay. So these are definitely things that we must definitely know and remember. Okay. And then Venerable Ananda says, I have heard and learned this from the Blessed One, and that is, when the Bodhisattva came from his mother's womb, first gods received him. Because remember, the 4 gods were always there, every moment protecting the baby. Okay? And so when the baby is being born, the first being who receives the baby is not a human. It's a God who receives. And Venerable Ananda says, this is also wonderful and marvelous quality of the Buddha. And then he says, when the Bodhisattva is born, the 4 young gods receives him and sets him before his mother, saying to the mother, rejoice, O queen, a son of great power has been born to you. Okay, so when the gods receive the Bodhisattva, what they do is they don't put him on the ground, but rather they presents the baby to the mother, and they says, rejoice, O queen, a son of great power has been born to you. This is also a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. And then Venerable Ananda says another marvelous and wonderful quality of the Blessed One is when the Bodhisattva is born, he is very clean. Now, you all have seen babies being born, right? Babies are born smeared with blood and, babies are not born clean, but Bodhisattvas, when Bodhisattva is born, the Bodhisattva is unsmeared. That is, there is no dirt, there's nothing impure in his body. Okay? There's no blood, there's no impure, unclean thing in the Bodhisattva's body. It's very, very clean. Okay, like no, nothing impure gets on his skin. That's why, because the Bodhisattva is so pure. Because as you know, one of the great characteristics of the Buddha is that the Supreme Buddha had very soft skin, and it said that the Supreme Buddha's skin does not get any even dirt. It's so smooth and soft that even dirt does not stay on the body. Okay, so an example is like this. The Supreme Buddha teaches it's like this. A gem, if you have a gem and a khasi cloth is a very, very soft cloth. Okay, then the gem would not smear the cloth or the cloth the gem. Okay, why? Because they are both very, very pure and smooth. In the same way, because the Bodhisattva's body is so pure and so soft, no impure things gets on his body. So this is also a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. Okay? And then Venerable Ananda says another marvelous quality of the Blessed One is when the Bodhisattva is born, two jets of water appears from the ground. Okay, one cool and one warm. So two jet springs appears from the ground, and it bathes the mother and the baby. This is also another marvelous and wonderful quality of the Blessed One. Okay, and then Venerable Ananda says, another marvelous and wonderful quality of the Blessed One is the moment the Bodhisattva is born, he can stand firmly. So these are not things that we can see in an ordinary person. Okay, but when a Bodhisattva is born, he can stand firmly with his feet on the ground. Okay, then he takes 7 steps facing north, and he utters these words, and that is, Aggo hamasmi lokassa, I am the highest in the world. Jetto hamasmi lokassa, setto hamasmi lokassa, I am the foremost in the world. I am antima jati nattidani punabhavati. This is my last birth. I will not be reborn again. So the moment a Bodhisattva is born, he utters these words. Okay, so this too is a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. So these, and Venerable Ananda says, I have heard this from the Blessed One himself. So the Supreme Buddha himself is the one who has taught this. Okay, so these are things only unique to Buddha's life. Okay, and then Venerable Ananda says, the moment the Bodhisattva is born into this world, just like it happened during conception, a bright light spreads throughout the entire universe, such that even the darkest hell is lightened again. So that also happens when a Buddha arises. Okay, so that's when it said that's when people know that a Buddha has born into this world. Okay, so this is also another wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. So when this is said, our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, was listening to this, and the Supreme Buddha tells Venerable Ananda that being so Ananda, remember this too as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Tathagata. Okay, so the Supreme Buddha was listening to all the qualities that Venerable Ananda was saying, and afterwards the Supreme Buddha tells Venerable Ananda, remember this too as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Tathagata, and that is, Ananda, for the Tathagata, feelings are known as they arise, as they are present, and as they disappear. So when a feeling arises in the Tathagata is well aware. Okay? And when that feeling is persisting in the mind, Tathagatas are well aware. And when that feeling disappears, Tathagatas are well aware. So that just shows how mindful and how aware Buddhas are. Right? For a normal person, they don't know when the feeling arises, they don't know when the feeling disappears, and of course, they don't know while the feeling is there, they're not aware of it. But Buddhas, when a feeling appears, when a feeling arises, when a feeling continues, persists, and when a feeling disappears, at each of those moments, Buddhas are well aware. And then Surya teaches perceptions. Perceptions are known as they arise. So when a perception arises, when a perception is present, and when a perception disappears, the Buddha is well aware in each of those moments. And thoughts are known as they arise. So when a thought arises, when a thought persists, and when a thought disappears, Buddhas are well aware and mindful. So that just shows how mindful Buddhas are. And Supreme Buddha teaches, this is also Ananda, remember this also as another wonderful and marvelous quality of the Tathagata. Okay, and at that time, when Venerable Ananda told the Supreme Buddha, Venerable Sir, okay, yes, I will remember this also as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One, because the only marvelous qualities that he had remembered were those that were taught by the Buddha previously. So now, at this moment, the Supreme Buddha taught another marvelous and wonderful quality of the Supreme Buddha. And Venerable Ananda said, okay, now I will remember this as well. Okay. So this is what the Venerable Ananda said, and the teacher approved. And the bhikkhus were satisfied and delighted in the Venerable Ananda's words. Okay, so this is the end of the sutta. So in this sutta, when we listen to this sutta, we can really form a pleasant mind about our great teacher, because our great teacher's life is extraordinary. It's marvelous, it's wonderful. And if a person forms a pleasant mind about the Supreme Buddha, then that the amount of merit that person collects into his life is just absolutely great. Okay, and that pleasant mind is so important because the Supreme Buddha teaches Shraddha or confidence in the Buddha is one of the main things that you need to develop the Dhammapada. Okay, so when you read and learn these suttas, it helps us to develop our confidence in the Buddha, which is a must-have in order to develop the Dhammapada. Okay. And for you to understand how valuable and how much merit a person can collect by forming a pleasant mind about the Buddha, I will tell you, this is also a sutta in relation to Venerable Ananda, and that is, one day Venerable Ananda asked our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, Venerable Sir, I have heard that the Supreme Buddha Sikhi had a disciple called Abibu, and to he had the ability to make his voice be heard even to the Brahma world. So this is also something that was taught to Venerable Ananda by the Buddha. So Venerable Abibu, he had the ability to make his voice be heard even to the Brahma world. So Venerable Ananda is asking, Venerable Sir, how far can the Tathagata spread his voice? So at that time, the Supreme Buddha said, Ananda, that is a disciple. Okay? Tathagata's abilities are immeasurable. Okay? So now Venerable Ananda is continuing to ask this a second time and the third time. Okay? And so at that moment, our great teacher Supreme Buddha taught, okay, that the Supreme Buddhas can spread their voice up to billions of, like as far, even beyond billions of world systems. Okay? And Buddhas can spread the voice that far. Okay? And when Venerable Ananda heard this, he was so happy and he thought, oh wow, my great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, is so powerful, and he formed such a pleasant mind about the Supreme Buddha. Okay? And at that time, there was another bhikkhu there called Uday, and he said to Venerable Ananda, why are you so happy? It's not one of your abilities, it's the ability of the Tathagata. And so at that time, the Supreme Buddha said, Uday, don't say that. Don't say that. Ananda's pleasant mind about the Buddha is so great that he collected so much merit by forming a pleasant mind about the Buddha, even in this very short moment, that merit that he collected is enough for him to be reborn in the world of the Tavatins as God's Sakka even 7 times. So see how much merit that you can collect by forming a pleasant mind about the Buddha even for a short time. And at that time, the Supreme Buddha said, but Anand is going to reach Nibbana in this very life. But what you can get from that is if you form a pleasant mind about the Buddha even for a short time, wholeheartedly, a pleasant mind wholeheartedly, it can create much merit into your life. So that's why when you see Buddha statues, when you recollect about the qualities of the Buddha, when you read suttas like this, when you form a pleasant mind about the Buddha, that pleasant mind is what will get you the opportunity to meet a Buddha in a future life, or that merit is what will give you the opportunity to listen to a Buddha's Dhamma at least in a future life. So that pleasant mind is so important. Okay, so you may be living in a far away place, but if you have that pleasant mind about the Buddha, if you at least get to listen to a couple of words of a Buddha, that pleasant mind will arise quickly, and you will go in search of a Buddha. You will go in search of the Dhamma, and you will go and enter the path to Nibbana. Okay, so that is why it's important to develop our confidence in the Supreme Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, because that is the root, that is a seed that will allow us to help the tree of to help to enter the path to Nibbana and end by attaining Nibbana. Okay, so may this beautiful sutta help all of us to form a pleasant mind about our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, and develop our confidence to the level of having unshakable confidence in the Buddha and attain Nibbana in this very Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.